Today is a very holy and auspicious day, which I will speak briefly about this morning. This festival that we are beginning to celebrate, Pushya, has a long history. We will speak about the festival this evening before the offering of flowers. But for now, it is a very devotional and also symbolic expression. All of us together, over the years, we have had millionaires, middle-class people, beggars, farmers, engineers, monks, politicians, ladies and men, people from all different races and countries, PhDs, and little babies, all sitting around the same pile of flowers, plucking petals, which is very important. Because in the path of devotion or bhakti, patram pushpam palanto yam yoni bhakti prayachati. The only real consideration is the sincerity of the intent of our devotion. And if we recognize and appreciate that, rather than material hierarchies or qualifications, then we can actually be truly united. So often in this world, the ahankara, the ego, makes us think that someone else is better or that I'm better on the basis of material circumstances or skills or qualifications. But Krishna explains, Patram Pushpam Palanto, from the perspective of God, the only qualification that the Lord considers is the sincerity of our devotion, our humility, our compassion, our willingness to please the Lord, our enthusiasm to serve. And the service that you are doing, plucking flower petals, anyone can do it. And each petal is meant to be an offering of our love. If with sincere affection you pluck even one petal, with that state of consciousness, you can perfect the process of yoga. Ishvara pranidhana. If we pluck a single petal for the Lord with sincere and pure devotion, we get the culmination of the Eightfold Yoga systems, lifetimes of tapasya and austerities, chanting millions and millions of names and kirtans. And actually all of our devotional and yogic practices are meant so that we can be in the right conscience to make this offering of love to the Lord. Please understand, each petal could be the perfection of your life if you just pluck it properly. Krishna explains, as you approach, according to the sincerity and the humility of our surrender, the Lord reciprocates accordingly. So if we pluck a petal from Krishna's flower nicely, then Krishna will reciprocate and pluck our hearts away from material sufferings and entertainment. And when everyone together is You see, we can't really take much credit. Because tonight you will see when all of these flower petals are offered to Pushya, you're not going to be able to think, I plucked that one. And she was like that one. Because it's all the offering of our combined efforts. And that's what makes it a festival, where the combined devotion of all of us are united. In other words, when you pluck the flower, it's your devotion, but once you put it in this basket, it's our devotion. Sankirtan. When we chant the holy names together, when we make offerings together, when we do seva together, that's most beautiful. Krishna tells, when my devotees are gathered together to serve me, to hear about me, to chant my names and glories, I'm in that place. That is the spiritual world. To respect, to honor, to appreciate each other's devotion, however great or small it may appear, is actually what spiritual community is about. And that is what we're trying to impress through this festival. And even the simplest, most elementary seva as this can bring us all together to make an offering of devotion. Today is a very holy day. Many incredible things happened historically. It is Vasant Panchami, which means the first day of spring, according to the Vedic calendar. Vasant Panchami is incredibly celebrated in holy places. In Vrindavan, it is the first day of Holi. They celebrate Holi for 40 days, and today is the inauguration. Holi, we have a painting of it, is when everyone throws their colors on each other. We tried that in the temple some years ago. We have it every year, and actually one particular day called Purnima, or Gaur Purnima. But what happens, it's supposed to be a day of offering our love to each other through the various colors of scented waters, powders, flowers, and sweets. But the nature of this world is things lose their context through misinterpreting the form. Have you ever experienced it? This festival of love, this is my love. That's the way Radha and Krishna becomes a battle. They conquer the other. Anyways, by the end of the festival, it took 1.5 months to clean the temple. And now we have it in a different way. But this flower festival is very much holy. At the end of the ceremony tonight, the Mahaprasad of all these several tons of flower petals will be showered upon all of us, and we will shower it upon each other, sharing God's grace with each other in loving devotion. But please be aware, it's not meant to be a war. It's meant to be a sharing offering. That is Vasant Panchami. And it's also the first day of Krishna's spring Rasa at Govardhan, which is described in great scriptures like the Gita Govinda. It's the day to honor many great saints and avatars as well. I'd like to, each one of these could be a long and, in my case, boring class in itself. But I'll just briefly explain some of them. Today is the appearance day of Srila Pundarika. Is it on? We chose this verse particularly in reference to Pundarika because the Lord teaches the practical application of the scriptures through the lives of great souls. There is the book Bhagavatam, or the scripture, and there is the person Bhagavat, one who personifies the essence of the scripture. And as we were explaining, sometimes we have a tendency to judge people or things by the external appearance without really understanding the essence, the heart. Lord Chaitanya is Krishna, who incarnated in this world. Krishna spoke the Bhagavad Gita 5,000 years ago. But then he himself appeared, incarnated 500 years ago. Krishna wanted to taste the love of his own feminine counterpart. The Absolute Truth has both male and female nature. Radha Krishna. So Krishna wanted to taste the sweetness of Radha's love. And so appeared in the role of a devotee to teach us practically how to apply Bhagavad Gita to our lives. Lord Chaitanya was living in Navadvip. And one day he started crying out, "Pundarik, my father! Pundarik, my father!" And the devotees around him were wondering, who is this Pundarik? Because they never met him. And he kept saying, "Pundarik, my father." Then they asked him. He said, "A very great devotee named Pundarik Vidyaliti. He is soon to come to Navadvip." Now, Pundarik Vidyaliti, he was from a place called Chattagam, which is in today's Bangladesh. He was an extraordinarily wealthy man. He owned large tracts of land. He was a landlord in the sense that he would rent out his land to others, he would sell his land to others, and very, very wealthy. He also had a home near Navadvip. He came there, and nobody knew he was there. And one Lakunta Dutt, who was a beautiful kirtan singer, he knew Pundarik Vidyaliti very well because he was from his same hometown. So he told a devotee named Gadadhar Pandit that, "Would you like to come with me to meet a great devotee?" And Gadadhar Pandit said, "I'm always eager to get the blessings and the association and hear from great devotees." So they went. And Gadadhar Pandit was a very renounced person. Since his very childhood, he had no material ambitions whatsoever. He was a brahmachari, a celibate monk, and lived an extremely simple, austere life. And naturally, he valued that lifestyle. Mukunda Das brought him into Pundarik Vidyaliti's home, near the bank of the Ganga. Gadadhar Pandit was shocked and confused with what he saw. He saw very elegant furniture, silk. There was gold and silver and jewels, and he saw beautiful white sheets covering the silk. And there on it was Pundarika sitting with costly ornamented garments and jewelry. And he had very fine combed hair with perfumed fragrances. And he was chewing on some spices, and there was a hookah that he was smoking. We can't imitate these things. And there were two servants on each side of him, fanning him with yak-tail whisks. And there was a mirror on the side of him. And he would, every now and then, just look at himself in the mirror and smile. Now this simple brahmachari, Gadadhar Pandit, is looking at him and thinking, why have you taken me here? You're saying he's a great devotee? He looks like a very ordinary, typically materially infatuated, attached person, just enjoying life. Gadadhar didn't say anything, but his face kind of showed that he was disappointed and confused. Mukunda Dutt understood his mind, and he sang this verse that we have sung together today. The translation, Aho Bhakigam Stanakrama Kudam. Alas, how should I take shelter of one more merciful than he, who granted the position of a mother to Putana, although she was unfaithful and she prepared deadly poison to be sucked from her breast. This is a quotation from Srimad Bhagavatam, one of Krishna's very dear friends and devotees, Uddhava. After Krishna left this world, in great ecstasy of love and separation, this verse sprung from his heart as with tears of emotion. And the meaning of this verse, which is very, very deep and profound, is that Putana was such an evil person. She would kill innocent babies by disguising herself in various ways and then eat them. And she was sent specifically to kill Krishna when he was a newborn baby. Little Gopal was only about 2 days old. Now, for many of you, you have seen 2-day-old children. They're very vulnerable and fragile. They have tiny little fingers, completely dependent on the care and the love of the mother. And Krishna looked exactly like that. He was so beautiful. Sometimes when babies are born, they kind of look like little raisins. They're all shriveled up and everything. The mother thinks they're beautiful. Swamis have to kind of try to see through the eyes of the mother. But Krishna was absolutely all attractive and beautiful for anyone who saw, even when he was just born. And Putana disguised herself as a beautiful, beautiful lady. And Krishna's own mother, Yashoda, who was the topmost yogi of devotion, she loved her child more than anything and everything. When she saw Putana, she was thinking, this lady must have come from some higher realm. She's so special. And Putana picked up Krishna and put her breast in his mouth to drink her milk. She disguised herself like a mother. But what no one knew is she had previously to going there applied on her breast Kalakutam, a very deadly form of poison. There was enough poison on her breast to kill dozens of grown men. And here's just a 2-3-day-old baby. And you know what he did? He sucked it. And first he sucked out all the poison. And then he sucked more. And then he started sucking, somehow or other, a little milk came out. Because he was so beautiful, she actually developed, right at that last moment, some motherly affection for him. A little milk came out. Then he started sucking out her prana, her life force. And it started to become very painful. So she, a mystic yogini who had supernatural power, she grew to an immense form. And with all of her strength, she was trying to rip little baby Krishna off her because he was sucking out her life. And with Krishna's tender little baby infant hands, he squeezed her. And she couldn't get him off. And he was squeezing so hard it was causing her pain, and then with his little tiny legs he was kicking her. And kept sucking. Until she was screaming with a thunderous voice, "Child, leave me, leave me, leave me." She fell to the ground. She was finished. Now what Uddhava is expressing here is, according to the Srimad Bhagavatam, this great scripture, Krishna gave her the highest liberation, mukti. He gave her an eternal place in the spiritual world where she could be his loving mother as a nurse. How is this possible? She killed others. She came with the envy and the merciless purpose of killing the Lord. But after the Lord sucked all the poison out of her, all that was left that he saw was that she actually had this little trace of motherly love for me. And I've taken all her ego away and just left that one thing. And that was her thought at the time of death. He gave her a liberation which people strive for hundreds of lifetimes to achieve and can't achieve in that moment. Because the Lord sees whatever little spark of sincerity we have in our heart and wants to fan that. So Uddhava was very humble. He's thinking, I'm so unqualified. But if I take shelter of the Lord, if he can give the highest liberation to Putana, where else can I take shelter? This was his spirit. So back to the story we're telling. Mukunda chanted this verse while Pundarika was looking at himself in the mirror, being fanned, chewing spices and smoking hookahs in his incredible garments. And when he heard this, he went into the most intimate state of samadhi. Now there's different kinds of samadhi. Some people think samadhi just means you're just completely motionless, absorbed within. Well, he was completely absorbed within, but he wasn't motionless. He went into such a state of ecstasy, of just remembering how kind Krishna is. Even to envious enemies, he's giving the highest liberation. he started crying out, who else can I take shelter of? Who else can I take shelter of? And then he started rolling in the ground in transcendental ecstasy, and torrents of tears were pouring from his eyes, his hairs were standing on end, his limbs were trembling, all sorts of supernatural manifestations were happening in his body. The hookah fell over, all the pots were scattering everywhere, his hair became distangled, his beautiful clothes became all kind of torn and ragged as he was rolling around crying out the holy names of Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. And Gadadhar Pandit, Brahmachari, was watching this. He was in this state, rolling around, crying in ecstasy, with his hands raised, loudly chanting Krishna's name. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. For over 6 hours. And Mukunda was watching. He just kept singing the verse. And Gadadhar Pandit was watching this. And he was thinking in his mind, Gadadhar, that I misjudged him. I thought he was just an ordinary materialistic person because he actually appeared that way. But what was in his heart? Completely pure. So he thought I made an offense by thinking of him in the wrong way. I should make up my offense by accepting him as my guru. So he asked Mukunda, and Mukunda said, this is a very good idea. So when Pundarik Vidyanidhi finally came out of his samadhi trance, he didn't know what was happening. He kind of looked around and he saw he was all torn up clothes and his hair was like this, and everything around him was all over the place. And he became embarrassed. He said, what happened? What happened? And Mukunda said, Gadadhar Pandit wants to be your disciple. I am your servant, whatever way I could serve you. And when Gadadhar asked the permission of Lord Chaitanya, he was so very, very happy. So here's a complete renunciate with a family man. Pundarik Vidyanidhi was married, he had children, he had wealth, he had position, and Gadadhar Pandit became his disciple. Because beyond the appearance of all these things, he understood in his heart of hearts. He had such deep compassion and devotion. He actually had no attachment to anything in this world. But the Lord wanted to show the world through him that he was performing his duties in a very special way. What is that saying? You cannot judge a book simply by looking at its cover. We have to go beyond the cover to see the content inside. That's what Krishna sees. And it's very important that that's what we learn to see. Today is the appearance day of Pundarik Vidyanidhi. Would you like to hear another story about him, or should I go on to Huh? Radhanath Prabhu, give me order, please. It's also this appearance day of Raghunath Das Goswami. Just as he was misjudged later on in his life, he misjudged on the basis of external, superficial appearances. He was in Puri, This is years later. And there is a festival which took place last month. It's called Odana-shasti. Today's the first day of spring. Odana-shasti is the beginning of winter. On that day, in Jagannath's temple in Orissa, where they were living, they offer new winter garments to the Lord on the altar. There's Jagannath, Balaram, and Subhadra. It's a beautiful festival. I'm not allowed in the temple to see it, but I've heard about it and I've read about it. In this particular festival, there's all sorts of chanting and all sorts of offerings, and they have these garments, brand new, that they offer to the deities. So Puttarik Vidyamiti, along with Lord Chaitanya and Swarup Damodar Goswami, his best friend, they were there. And he said to Swarup Damodar Goswami, what are these temple priests doing? This is not right. What is it? What's on your mind? He said, according to the scripture and according to tradition, you don't offer the Lord starched garments without first washing them. And these are starched, unwashed garments. It's not right. They're considered unclean. Why don't they wash them? Swarup Damodar Goswami said, the Supreme Lord is beyond dualities, and he's beyond all these rules and regulations that you're talking about. He doesn't have to follow them. And Pundarik said, I know, that's true, the Lord does, but the priests are not the Lord. They should be following the proper standards. It's unclean what they are giving him. And they laughed, and they went home. Pundarik Vidyamiti went to sleep. Suddenly, in his dream, it wasn't exactly a dream, Lord Jagannath and Balaram walked toward him. They don't have legs or feet, but they walk toward him. Krishna doesn't need legs or feet to walk, because he has transcendental legs and feet. So he walked toward him, and Jagannath's eyes are very big. They were red with anger. And Pundarik Vidyamiti, what's going on? I've never seen Jagannath so angry. And then Jagannath and Balaram started slapping Pundarik Vidyamiti's face with their hands. And Pundarik Vidyamiti, my Lord, why are you doing this to me? What have I done? What have I done? I'm sorry. And Jagannath said, there is no end to your offense. You have judged and criticized my devotees. If I like their starched cloths because they're offered with devotion, why should you object to it? Now we will teach you a good lesson. And he was like screaming out, I'm sorry, my Lord, I'm yours. And then Jagannath smiled and said, because you didn't do anything so bad, I will leave you today. But if you don't like the way my devotees are living here, because you're seeing on such a superficial external level, if it's offered with devotion, even if it has starch on it, I like it. What is your point? All these rules and your regulations are meant to please the Lord. If you don't follow them, but you please the Lord, then that's perfect. Then he left. And Pundarik Vidyamiti woke up. Such a mystery. When he woke up, he saw and he felt his cheeks were red and swollen from being slapped by the Lord. And when he went to see his friend and the devotees in the temple the next day, he kind of overslept that day. A little later when he came, everyone saw that his cheeks hips were all swollen. They said, what happened? And he explained, and everyone was very happy. And he was very happy. You see, everything is relative to our perception. Just like if you were beaten on your cheeks, it would cause pain. But for him, because it was the love and the inconceivable grace of the Lord, it felt so nice. The Srimad Chakravarti Thakur explains is how perception influences us so much. If somebody comes up to you and bites you, be honest, does it feel good or bad? You could all tell me, does it feel, say either good or bad if somebody just comes up and bites you? A mosquito bites you. Or to speak of a human being comes and goes, feels bad. Now, brahmacharis, you can understand this in your own way, but if your most intimate lover in the act of romance bites you, does it feel good or bad? I'm a Swami. I can only give you a theoretical answer, but it feels so good. So because it's the intent. You know, if your enemy bites you, it feels bad. But if your lover bites you in an act of expressing love, it feels good. Bhishma, out of love, was shooting arrows in Krishna, and Krishna was feeling the same thing as a loving devotee throws flower petals on him. Because the Lord is Bhavagrahi Janardana. He sees our intent, he sees our devotion, he experiences our love. So Kundalini Vidyamiti was very happy. And through this pastime, the Lord taught us that we shouldn't just calculate things on simply the external appearance, but the content of devotion. It is also she is Lakshmi Devi herself, Radha Sita, who appeared in this world and became the wife of Lord Chaitanya. The story is fascinating. If you go to Tirupati or these other temples in South India, we understand that the Lord there are three various energies from the feminine aspect of the divine, of Krishna, or Vishnu. And that's Shri, Bhu, and Lila. In Lord Chaitanya's Lila, Lakshmi Devi was the Shri potency. The Navadvip Dham is the Lila potency. And Vishnu Priya is the Bhu potency. It is this Bhu potency who, when coming from the spiritual world, enters into this material cosmos. She is Mother Earth. From a bhakti perspective, Mother Earth is the divine potency of the absolute truth. Within the context of material nature, Radha, Sita, Lakshmi is appearing as a nourishing mother who provides everything for us. We are all, whether we're old or young, whether we're Olympic gold medalists or whether we're invalided old people, we're all like little babies, depending on Mother Earth. She provides air, sunshine, water, field, something to stand on. She provides the elements of our body, of our mind. We cannot live for a moment whoever we are, without the grace of Mother Earth, Mother Nature. So it was Vishnu Priya who appeared in this world. In Krishna Lila, she was Satyabhama, and her father was Satyajit. And Satyajit became Sanatana Mishra. Lord Chaitanya's mother, Sachi Devi, every day she would go to the river Ganges, Ganga, to bathe and to bring water. And every day she would see this little girl, Vishnu Priya. She was the embodiment of good qualities. Because she loved Krishna, she loved God so much, she was respectful and honored everyone. Very sweet nature. She'd be doing her little pujas to the Lord on the bank of the Ganges with just a little girl with tears of love. And she would just serve everyone and anyone that came by offering respects. And Sachi Devi fell in love with this little girl. And as she grew older, Sachi Devi was thinking, this is the natural wife for my son, Nimai. Nimai was, Sachi Devi at that time was a widow. She had no husband. And they were a Brahmin family. They didn't have much money. But Vishnu Priya, in her heart of hearts, she's the eternal consort, the feminine aspect of the Supreme Lord. So naturally they have eternal love for each other. And that lila, or that pastime of their coming together to manifest that love for each other took place just before their marriage. And one very, very wealthy man, Buddhimanta Khan, he said, I will give all my fortune, whatever is necessary, to arrange a glorious marriage for Vishnu Priya and Shri Nimai. And the scriptures tell an incredible story about that marriage ceremony. And how they lived together as husband and wife. Absorbed in chanting Krishna's names, keeping their house as a beautiful temple of the Lord, and constantly inviting people to serve. Lord Chaitanya would sometimes come home with like 30 swamis. And Vishnu Priya would be so excited, and Sachi Devi, and they'd cook and they'd serve and they'd make everything. For the poor people, they would give whatever charity they have. To the saints, they would serve. And we're just living together, totally absorbed in chanting Krishna's names and serving everyone. Embodiments of compassion. And at a certain time, Lord Chaitanya, when he was only 24 years old, and Vishnu Priya was even younger, he understood that in order to spread throughout India and eventually the world this love of God through kirtan, through the chanting of the holy names, I must be able to travel everywhere, and people must recognize my position, to hear from me. So Lord Chaitanya, in those days in India, if you took sannyas or became a Swami, people would really listen to you. These days it's not like that. So take it from a Swami. Because there's so many different things Swamis do these days. So Lord Chaitanya was going to take sannyas. He was living with the most loving mother, the most loving wife, in a nice home with so many friends and devotees. but for the sake of the people in general, to reach them. His mother understood his message. Vishnupriya was weeping. I will never see you again. You're my life, my soul, my love, my everything. Lord Chaitanya told her that we can never be separated. You are my eternal consort. And you will always be in my heart, and I am always in your heart. And we've come to this world to reach these people, and this is what's required. And Vishnupriya, with such love, such compassion, she said, if this is what will help your mission, then let it be. So in the middle of the night, at the time of Makara Sankranti, Lord Chaitanya left his home, took sannyas. But the Lord never forgot Vishnupriya. In his intoxicated tune of ecstasy of love of Krishna and sharing love of Krishna, prema bhakti with the world, the Lord's very dear associate named Vamsi Vadana, he arranged a beautiful murti or deity of Lord Chaitanya to be given to Vishnupriya. This is the first deity of Lord Chaitanya to be worshipped. And Vishnupriya, she didn't just see it as a wood deity. Lord Chaitanya was personally, in his full manifestation, present in that murti for her. And in her lovely separation, would you like to hear something about her lifestyle? After the Lord left, she would wake up very early in the morning, hours before the sun rises. Along with Sachi Devi, she would go to take her bath in the river Ganges.